This is the second in our series of On the Record, a series of conversations with public leaders about public leadership. We started this last fall with Mayor Karen Bass, and we resume it today with a series of interviews with candidates for mayor, today with Adam Miller, next week with Reverend Ray Wong, April 1st with Councilwoman Nithya Raman. We'll have Mayor Bass back if she wants to do another crack at it. And we are waiting still for Spencer Pratt to respond to us. I'm going to start tagging him on social media, and I figure that's probably how he'll notice me most. And then we will be having Supervisor Lindsay Horvath, who's not running for mayor, but she will be here April 15th. And then soon after that, dates to be determined, we'll be talking with Rick Caruso and with Supervisor Catherine Barger, with Supervisor Holly Mitchell, and with Council President Marquise Harris-Dawson. So please stay tuned for announcements about that. Before we start today, let me just sort of explain the purpose of this and give an important disclaimer. We've put together this series of conversations with people who are in office or who are running for office or who are leaders in civic life to hear their views on the issues for sure, but also to discuss public leadership. What are the decisions they make? How do they make them? How do they set their priorities? What trade-offs do they make in setting an agenda? Because that tells you a lot about who somebody is and how they will govern. The disclaimer I need to make about the mayor's race is that I know really well most of the candidates for mayor. So I've known Karen Bass for 30 years and endorsed her last time. I have served 2 years with Nithya Raman and did a fundraiser for her re-election 2 years ago. I have done coalition work over the years with Reverend Ray, and she's been to my house for Friendsgiving and stuff like that. And Adam and my husband Sean have worked together for 5 years now. Seven years. Holy shit. 7 years now, doing some amazing work with one of the nonprofits that Adam started. And I don't know Spencer at all. I have never watched that TV show, so he's the one I do not know. But so I am staying out of this race, and we will also be, I hope, moderating a mayoral forum with ABC7 and the League of Women Voters, date to be determined, and we'll keep you posted on that as well. So with that, let me welcome Adam Miller. Appreciate having you here. You bet. So let me start as I do when I do these interviews. And this will be rebroadcast on YouTube and also rebroadcast on the What's Next Los Angeles podcast, the audio version. And when I interview candidates on that podcast, the thing I always ask them to start with is, give me your pitch. Speak to the voters. What's your 3-minute elevator pitch about who you are and why somebody should vote for you?
Sure. Well, first of all, Mike, thank you for doing this, and thank you for all your public service. You've been an incredible public servant, and you continue even today, so thank you for that. So I love LA. I raised my family here. I have run multiple companies here. I've run multiple nonprofits here. I coached multiple soccer teams here. I love this place, but the city's broken. And you see it everywhere. We have figuratively broken streets. We are broken both figuratively and literally. The streets are broken. The street lights are broken. The sidewalks, the homeless encampments. People don't feel safe in their homes. People are concerned about economic opportunity. It's very hard to live here now. It's become expensive to live here. And people don't feel like things are affordable. It's also broken figuratively. We have issues around trust and transparency and accountability and safety as it relates to natural disasters and preparedness. And generally, I have found that this is true across the city. We have 99 unique neighborhoods in LA. It's an incredibly diverse city. There's incredible land mass here, right? The city is 469 square miles, is a very big geographic distribution. And yet, everybody agrees that the city is going in the wrong direction generally. People feel like we can do better. The city needs to be fixed. and we need a builder to fix it. And I'm that builder. So my first company was a restaurant in Westwood. My second one was a technology company that started in my apartment and grew to become the largest education company in the world. During that time, I took the same experiences I had learned running a corporation and applied it to the nonprofit sector to help veterans and resolve disasters, doing humanitarian aid around the world. When my family was struck with food allergies, which is an epidemic nationally, 1 in 12 kids have food allergies, we took action, and I started what became the largest food allergy nonprofit in the world by merging multiple nonprofits together, doing hundreds of millions of food allergy research, building a national network, building the UCLA food allergy program, working to commercialize treatments and food and services for that community. When George Floyd was murdered, with Sean's help, we built a program to provide internships for 18 to 24-year-olds, predominantly from South and East LA, from underserved communities who didn't have the same economic opportunity that maybe some other Angelenos had, and we got them that opportunity. We found that talent was equally distributed, but opportunity was not, and so we took action. We started a program we called the 1,000 Interns Initiative. People thought it was a crazy idea because people were not getting internships. They weren't getting access to jobs in tech in LA. And that program has been so successful that we've done over 2,000 internships and apprenticeships and are on track to do over 500 more this year. But when I sold Cornerstone in October of 2021, I was running it for 10 years as a private company and then 10 years as a public company as a CEO. We took it private in October of 2021 by selling it to a private equity firm. And when that happened, I took my resources, my experiences, and our family's commitment to serving the community and decided to focus on the most intractable problem in LA, which is homelessness. We did about 1.5 years of research to understand why was it that we've spent so much money, we have so many talented people working on the issue, but we have not made sufficient progress. In fact, over the course of the last decade, the problem had gotten dramatically worse. And why was that? What could be done about it? And our solution was to create an organization called Better Angels to focus on a holistic solution to the homelessness epidemic in this city. The problem is a multidimensional problem. It requires a multidimensional response, and that's exactly what we've done, focused on prevention, services, shelter, technology, and housing to address the issue. The work I did got me very involved with the city and with the county to try to address this issue. We worked with nonprofits all over the city and the county. And the deeper I got into the issues, the deeper I realized that this city was not just broken, but that the problem we had was a leadership problem. So I'm glad that today we're talking about leadership. And I think ultimately, the way we're going to solve this and build Los Angeles to the potential it can have, make this city work better so that all Angelenos can live better, is by new leadership that has transparency, accountability, and operational experience to drive results and make us realize our potential as a city.
So going through that arc that you just went through, the different things you've built, what have you learned about leadership that would inform how you would lead the city of Los Angeles?
So I've had the good fortune of leading organizations in multiple dimensions and in multiple sectors. So I've run small businesses, I've run a large public multinational corporation, I've run local nonprofits, national nonprofits, global nonprofits, and what I've learned is that consistently, it's not just about positional power, it's also about personal power. And that if you really want to get things done, you have to have vision, you have to align the team on that vision, you have to be able to execute, and then you have to hold people accountable by measuring results and making changes to hit the goals that you want to hit.
What is the biggest crisis you've had to deal with as a leader?
So I've dealt on the corporate side with many crises as it relates to the macroeconomic environment. So I started the company in '99. It was a technology company trying to leverage the internet to help educate people. And of course, the internet bubble burst soon after I started the company in 2000. That was a huge problem. We had built a pipeline of business opportunity predominantly with financial service institutions. In 2001, it was going to be our first big sales as a business. And of course, September 11th tragically happened, and that whole industry shut down. There was an expectation and a lot of pressure to cut the business dramatically to essentially hibernate and survive that period. And it's a much longer story, but we essentially I decided against a lot of people telling me what to do, that the only way we were going to really thrive was to keep going and to pursue our vision. And that's what we did. And we ended up closing many of the deals we were working on, despite having to change terms, changing the way it worked. We lived through the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, which dramatically affected funding of businesses like mine, and were able to grow through that and survive and keep scaling. We had after going public, we had our two biggest competitors get acquired by companies that were much, much bigger than any of us. And we were able to grow through that, compete, and continue to build the business. So that's on the corporate side. Lots of issues, lots of challenges in being able to overcome things that happen internally in the business, but also things that happen externally that you don't necessarily have control over, but have to react to and iterate and respond.
Much like being mayor.
Much like being mayor. Same thing on the nonprofit side, whether it's trying to get Team Rubicon to survive from really just a few Marines trying to do some good in the world by taking the skills of veterans and applying it to humanitarian aid, responding to disasters. We started as a very small organization. We could barely make payroll. Today, we have over 170,000 volunteers. We're doing missions all over the world and all over the country. We have active deployments, and we're focused not just on disaster response, but we've expanded the scope to do disaster readiness, disaster response, and disaster recovery. All three things which I think LA has failed at.
Tell me about a time when you had to make an unpopular or controversial decision, but you knew it was the right thing to do. And I imagine it very well could be coaching youth sports, but I'll take any field that you can think of.
Yeah, well, on the soccer field with those AYSO teams, yes, it's very controversial. And I had some very opinionated parents that I had to deal with. So, yes.
Welcome to the neighborhood council system.
Exactly. But I would say some of the biggest challenges I faced were around personnel, for example. So a lot of times, whether we're talking about corporations or nonprofits, you will have somebody who's a great employee and they've done a great job. They're doing good work. Maybe they've been at the company or the organization for a while. And you say, okay, this is the right person to make a manager. Well, guess what? They were a great employee, but they're a terrible manager. And you have to do something about it. The same thing can be true if you have somebody who's been a good manager, but you make them an executive. Again, different job, different skills required, different experience perhaps needed, but certainly different leadership skills needed at that level. And again, They maybe were good at one job, but not good at the next, and you have to take action. So a lot of times it's leadership that's at the micro level. I would say at the macro level, as a leader of many organizations, you have to make a lot of decisions, and you're not always going to get the decisions right. The key that I have found to success is not shying away from making tough decisions, but rather being very self-aware. You have to decide and evaluate pretty quickly, was that a good decision or a bad decision? And if it was a bad decision, what are you going to do about it? Don't dig your heels in, accept reality, and pivot, iterate, do something different. You can always improve. And one of the constants about how I manage all of my organizations is this idea of continuous improvement. That it's very difficult to get a step function change in things overnight. No matter what you're doing, no matter the size of the organization, no matter how many employees you have. What is much more realistic and much more effective is just constantly improve. If you were able to continuously raise the bar 1, 2, 5%, but continuously, then in very short order, you are going to have a high-performing organization that is doing really great work and is achieving or even overachieving against your results and your objectives.
You talked about self-awareness, which makes me think of a question. Good leaders know what they know and what they don't know. You'd be going into a very different job and environment than you're used to. What do you think that you don't know that you'll need to hire to compensate for?
Yeah, so absolutely, I would need help around policy, some of the legislative rules, compliance requirements, right? All those things are different. The rules are different in different sectors and different industries. But what I found already through the campaign is that there's a lot of commonality in how these things work. A campaign is essentially a startup. You have to do many of the same things you do in a startup. You have to come up with your positioning. You have to develop your marketing and your branding. You have to build a team. You have to set goals and execute a plan. Very similar to what you do in any other kind of startup.
Yep.
The same thing is true with leadership, right? The way you apply the leadership skills you have are different. I've seen it very clearly between the corporate world and the nonprofit world. In the corporate world, the reality is that a CEO has tremendous authority. They can make decisions. That's true even with public companies. I found, contrary to intuition, that when I went from a private company CEO to a public company CEO, I actually had more control, not less control. And the reason was the public markets were operating at a higher level than the venture capitalists that were watching things on a daily basis. And so you had a wider range of operational control and authority. In the case of the nonprofit sector, totally different. It doesn't matter if you're the chairman, the CEO, the founder. I've been all of those things. What matters is consensus and collaboration. Because if you don't have people aligned with your vision in the nonprofit world, there's no amount of positional power that's going to get it done. And I think that's very relevant to the public sector, where, again, you have to leverage not just your position, but your personal power, your relationships, your ability to persuade, to get people on your side, collaborate together, make, in some cases, tough decisions and compromises to move the ball forward and get results.
So in government, the sort of decision-making ecosystem is very different than in private industry. Every email or text you send is a public record. Your calendar is a public record. Unless it's an emergency where you can do an executive order, every major thing you want to do, you have to convince 8 of 15 people to be behind it. Most decisions you want to make have built-in public comment timelines that make immediate action harder to do. How how can you fit your leadership style, which comes from a different decision-making ecosystem, into that kind of environment?
Yeah, it's a great question. What I have found is that regardless of what you're doing or what you're leading, even a soccer team, that the rules are different, right? Every industry, every sector, every organization has somewhat different rules. They have different norms, different behaviors, different expectations, and in many cases, different regulations. So what you're allowed to do, how you're allowed to do it. And what I have found is that over and over again, you first have to learn the rules of the game, but then you can leverage your skills and experiences to play that game. And in the case of being mayor, the game is obviously different than being a CEO of a public company or a private company or a nonprofit. But a lot of the skills and experiences are very applicable. And in the case of mayor, LA, often people will talk about as a weak mayoral system. And we even talked about this just before. And it is true in certain respects, but in other respects it's not true. So in New York, yes, the mayor controls the school system. In LA, the mayor does not. But in LA, the mayor controls the ports, and the airport in New York, they do not. So the rules are different. What you control is different. But if you think about it, the mayor has authority over 44 or so different departments. There's a tremendous amount of operational management that should be happening. There are many things that are pervading this city today that people are concerned about that don't require legal changes. They don't require changes in the rules. They require execution of rules that already exist or operation within rules that already exist. And so to me, that is largely a management problem. And so if you can be an effective leader, an effective manager, if you understand fiscal discipline and accountability, and you understand operational excellence and what high-performing teams look like and how to get them, then there's a tremendous amount that you can do with the levers that you are able to pull. It doesn't mean you could do everything. It does not mean you have a magic wand. And it doesn't mean you can change laws or change the game overnight. But you absolutely can operate within the confines of what you're given and make the most of it and have a lot of control.
Well, you anticipated my next question, which was about the weak mayor thing, so I can skip over that one. Let me talk about tests of leadership. We talked about some of the ones you've faced. I'm curious about your thoughts about the tests of leadership that Mayor Bass has faced. Which tests of leadership do you think she has passed, and which do you think she has failed?
Look, the test of leadership I think she's passed is that Mayor Bass has been a public servant most of her life. That's a hard thing to do. It requires a lot of sacrifice. It is something that more Americans should be doing, more Angelenos should be doing. People were extremely surprised that I was willing to run despite the success I've had, right? That it should be the opposite. It should be people who are successful are the ones we want running. They're the ones we want in office because they know how to get things done. I think the mayor has a tremendous track record of public service that should be commended. Having said that, where has she fallen down on leadership? This is too easy a question, right, for everybody here.
It's been a very quiet campaign, so spice it up.
Obviously, the fires were a complete abdication of leadership. And I mean that in all three places. Like I said, Team Rubicon does disaster readiness, which often is about mitigation of potential disasters, in this case, wildfire mitigation, and preparedness, emergency procedures, staffing, preparedness, readiness. We failed at the response. We did not have enough of a coordinated response. There were lots of issues that are coming out about the response, and we could have done better. And recovery. We are recovering far too slowly, we should have much more urgency. The people in both the Palisades, which is part of LA City, and Altadena, which is not LA City,
Yep.
but LA County, are furious with the response, with how this has happened. And the mayor should have been out front on all of this. And so I think it's not one failure, I think it's 3 failures that have happened. And I lead from the front. I would have been on the ground. I probably would have gotten in trouble because I would have been in the middle of the fire. And I would have been, and Sean's my witness, that's true. And I would have been front and center during a response, helping to assure people that we were responding, we had things under control. And I would be much more aggressive with recovery and ensure that we were doing recovery much faster. And I don't just need to talk about it. I'll tell you what I actually did. So Better Angels is an organization focused on ending the epidemic of homelessness in LA. We have a prevention team. One of the big things we do is a step fund program, which is for short-term eviction prevention, that helps people who are on the brink of eviction. They've already received an eviction notice, that were already vulnerable. They were below 50% area median income or less, and they had a financial shock. So these are people that are very likely to end up on the street. We give them a loan or a grant, depending on their situation, that gets paid directly to the landlord or the utility company. And we have found that a supermajority of these people are able to stay housed and stay off the street. We've helped about 2,000 Angelenos stay off the street with this program already over the last couple of years. But when the fires hit, we said, we got to pivot. We got to do something about this. So within 6 days of the fire starting, not finishing, starting, we were already distributing loans through our program to that same population of people below 50% AMI in the same areas. This program was already existing all over the county to help them get services they needed from the fires. These were grants, they weren't loans, they were all grants. And then we upped that program once things calmed down and people started thinking about, okay, what do I do now? This is a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later. I need to move into a different place. A lot of people, particularly in Altadena, that were impacted by the Eden fire, did not have the ability to pay security deposits. So they could pay rent. They had the income to pay rent, but they didn't have the savings to pay security deposits. So of course we created a security deposit program and we started doing security deposits for these people. That was what we did on the prevention side, but we also had a tech team because we've been building technology, the homeless service providers, to better, more efficiently do their outreach to unhoused individuals. And we took that same team and we said, let's respond in a different way. Let's use technology to help people that have been impacted by the fires to understand what services and benefits are available to them. So you might remember that the mayor announced a program called the Disaster Relief Navigator that was done by the city and the county and the state and the Red Cross, and I built that. Better Angels built that. We were the ones that did it. And by the way, we were ready to go 3 weeks before they actually published it because the city wasn't ready they wanted to check it and recheck it and have lots of feedback, and they wanted to host focus groups. And we were like, this is a crisis. There is a fire right now. There are people, thousands of people impacted. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. They don't understand what to do about the insurance. You might remember that there were a lot of tricky rules as related to mortgages and insurance and rent and what you had to and didn't have to do to make sure you got the full benefits that you were entitled to. We did that, and we were ready to go right after the fire, and we had to wait around to get approval so that this thing could get released. That would never happen in my administration. We would have taken immediate action. We would have gotten people the services they need, and we would have helped people much more quickly get back on their feet and get back to their lives.
A couple questions about homelessness. This is a very basic question, but I'm always intrigued that candidates actually have very different perspectives on this. To your mind, what is the cause of our homelessness crisis?
So we spent a year and a half doing research, my wife and I, on the homeless issue after I sold Cornerstone, before I started Better Angels. And the reason we did that was to really understand, where's all the money going? What are we doing? We have thousands of people in this city working on homelessness. These are capable, well-intentioned people that are doing great work. They're sacrificing, in many cases, better jobs, more income to help their neighbors. And we thought, what's wrong here? What's the silver bullet? Like, how can we solve this problem? And what we found was there is no silver bullet. This is a multi-dimensional problem. There are multiple causes. About 60% of people that end up on the street are because of a financial shock. About 40% are either through addiction or mental health issues. Some people say it's 20%. There's some overlap, obviously, in that population. But what I find most interesting is how many of the 60%, if kept on the street for 2, 3, 5, 12 months, end up in the 40% category. And it's a lot of people, right? There's real PTSD that happens living on the street. There's a real attraction to substance abuse if you're living on the street and you can't sleep at night. So it's not surprising that this is happening. And what we found is it's a multidimensional problem. It affects all different age groups. You know, I could talk for hours about this topic because I've spent the last many years working on this. And
don't, though, because we have other questions.
I won't, but think about Tay youth, right? It's absolutely
transition-aged youth, 16 to 24 or so.
So if you talk about that population, so these are kids that are aging out of the foster care system. So they're no longer needing to stay with a foster parent, but they're not necessarily given anywhere to go. 25% of them end up unhoused. 28% of them are basically unhoused or couch surfing, and they can't do that forever, right? Eventually they get kicked out of their friend's apartment, off their friend's couch, and so they end up homeless too. And this is totally predictable. We know right now who's going to graduate from the foster care system 10 years from now. We should be doing something about it. I'm very thankful that LACCD last week approved a provision that's going to have them allocate about 20% of their housing to this population, because that's what's needed. Our affordable housing fund that I built with Better Angels is working specifically on this issue. There are different things needed. Seniors need very different solutions. Single men, different solutions. Young moms with young kids need different solutions. So there's not a one-size-fits-all on this issue. And the solution has to be complex because the issue is complex. And that's why I believe, much like what I did with food allergy, you need a holistic solution here. You have to address this problem from multiple dimensions and holistically attack this epidemic of homelessness that's plaguing our streets.
I really appreciate your answer on that. The thoughtfulness, the complexity of it. I really appreciate that you said a few things that a lot of people don't say, particularly about mental health or addiction being a consequence rather than a cause of homelessness. And I love that you said that I used to say when I was talking about homelessness when I was in office, so good job on that. Could spend 2 hours talking just about homelessness with you, but so many other issues. Let me jump to housing. How much more housing does Los Angeles need? What kind does it need, and where should it be built?
Okay, so that question is almost a joke. So we have a major housing crisis, and it is a primary reason that we have an affordability crisis here in LA. because it's simple supply and demand. I went to business school undergrad. I got my MBA and law degree from UCLA, but I did not need to go to 6 years of business school to know that if demand outstrips supply, prices go up. And that's exactly what's happening here. We have a massive undersupply. People call this in economics a supply constraint, but that doesn't really tell you the whole story of housing. And people get confused by this because housing, a lot of times you picture a house. Housing means a place to live. It means an apartment, condo, a single family house, multifamily residential, any place that you can live. We don't have enough of it. And the consequence of that is twofold. One is rents are high because there's not enough supply. So if everyone's competing for the same housing, then the price is going to go up. It's just like trying to buy tickets after the fact on Ticketmaster or StubHub, right? If it's a really good concert, the tickets are more expensive than it's somebody nobody's heard of. It's the same thing. If the Rams are winning, then the tickets are more expensive because more people want to go. Same thing's happening with supply and demand here. Supply is too low. Demand is relatively fixed. Prices are much higher. The other consequence is the homelessness epidemic, because the reality is it's musical chairs. There's not enough seats in the room. So the music stops playing. Who gets the chair? The people who are the fastest, the people who can move. So who doesn't get the chair? The people who are mobility impaired. In the housing world, the equivalent is the wealthier people, jobs and people with opportunity are the ones getting the housing. And the people who are most vulnerable are the ones who don't get the housing, and that's why they're on the street.
So how many more units do you say we need? And here's the real key question. Where do we put it?
Yeah, so I mean, I could get super specific here. We need 250,000 units in the greater Los Angeles area. We need about 120,000 units of affordable housing in the greater Los Angeles area. I don't know what the exact numbers are relative to the city itself, but LA County. Yeah. And a lot of people think the mayor is responsible for the whole county anyway, so let's talk about the county. The reality is our housing starts are the lowest level they've been in 10 years. New housing permits are down 30% since 2019. It's absurd. It's absurd. We have a housing crisis, and we're going in the wrong direction. So we don't need an incremental increase in housing. We need a step function increase in housing. And that means we have to not just change some of the rules and make it easier to build. I could talk for hours about this topic because I've been building affordable housing in LA. I'm also a major investor in other affordable housing providers in LA and in modular development companies in LA. There is much we can do in this area, but it starts with treating real estate developers as our friends and not our enemies. And the reality is that LA has become a city that even the big national multifamily residential developers, so the ones that make the apartment buildings that the renters need to live in, want to build all over the country except in LA.
Right.
Because they view LA as a terrible place to build.
So
we have to change that.
I'm not asking for specific addresses, or even specific zip codes, but I do want to get to the where, because that's such a key issue. And do you think should we be focusing on transit corridors? Do we need to be upzoning some single-family neighborhoods? And when we have discussions about where, who gets to say no?
Yes, this question's really like, are you NIMBY or YIMBY? Right? NIMBY is not my backyard, which is against some of the new housing. YIMBY is yes, in my backyard, but really it's about abundant housing. How do you build more housing faster? And one of the things about my leadership style is I don't accept either or decisions. I'm both. I'm NIMBY and YIMBY. And you might say, well, how's that possible?
That would be
and
my
I
question.
would say I am extremely pro-housing. We must build a dramatic increase. We must dramatically increase the amount of housing that we have in this city, but we have 99 unique neighborhoods in this city. They look different, they feel different, and it's not economic. I know a lot of people say, oh, well, this part of town's wealthier, so they're all single family, and this one's less wealthy, so it's different. That's not true. You've been all over the city. It's different neighborhoods have a different feel. They have different opportunities. So we shouldn't have the same blanket rule apply to the entire city. It just doesn't work. SB 79, which is the provision for high increased density and higher builds all throughout the city when it's near metro stops, doesn't work because it's applying the same rule everywhere in the city. And that doesn't make sense in a place like LA where you have distinct neighborhoods. But it's our punishment for not building housing. We should be building way more housing. So the way you do that, for example, are things like livable communities. So I think most Angelenos would love if they were able to walk to coffee shops and restaurants and boutiques that are by their house. And there are many single-family neighborhoods with pretty backyards and nice streets that you could walk down that absolutely around the perimeter you could put, instead of single-story retail, in many cases that now looks dilapidated, can be replaced with single-story retail with 4 stories of housing above it. You could do that around many neighborhoods in this city and dramatically increase the number of housing units while at the same time making the neighborhood look better and be more walkable and more livable. But if you're talking about places like downtown or more urbanized parts of the city, there are many opportunities for urban infill where we have spots where maybe there's 4 or 6 or 8 or 12 units that are falling apart, and that could be replaced easily with 25 or 50 units in the same exact place that are newer, nicer, and cheaper than what's already there. We absolutely should be doing that too. And as you know, there's a lot of land that's held by the city, by LAUSD, by MTA that can be used to incentivize developers to build a financially responsible project that gets market rate returns and builds more housing, gets investors the return they want, and gets the city and taxpayers out of the business of construction.
I've been pulling on this housing thread. This thread will get pulled more aggressively on, I think, the 23rd is when you have the debate with abundant housing and streets for all that a bunch of the candidates are participating in. That'll be an interesting discussion, so I encourage folks to tune into that. Let me ask about public safety. I assume you have seen the famous Kenneth Mejia slide, the bar graph about how the city spends its money. This bar shows rec and parks, this LAPD. One of the mayor's biggest powers is setting the budget. The council has to approve it. They really do little more than tweak it. It sounds like a big fight, but it's an infinitesimal change in what they do.
I heard no more than 5%.
In a good year, right? In an aggressive year. So how would you develop, what would your budget look like to fund public safety in Los Angeles?
Let me talk about budgeting for a second in general, and then we could talk about public safety. So, look, this city has not been operating with fiscal discipline at all. We are constantly raising permits, fees, taxes on our residents and don't have standards around how we're spending. And yet we expect almost all Angelenos to live within their budget and live within their means. The city should be doing exactly the same thing. When you think about the economics of it, part of the problem is, obviously, there's a lot of well-intentioned people in public office, but they're not all financially aware, right? They didn't go to business school. They're not a CPA. They don't have experience in finance. They don't know about treasury. So it's understandable that people don't fully comprehend the nuances associated with this kind of work. there is a very clear opportunity to better operate our budget and have more fiscal responsibility in everything we're doing. And there's two levers here, right? You can spend less or make more. And we can do a better job of allocating the budget that we have now and drive much more operational efficiency across the board to not so much lower taxes, because that's unlikely to happen right now, but to better spend our money and reallocate dollars. And there's many examples of where we can apply this. So we could take money from certain areas and reallocate it to areas that are needed, whether we're talking about infrastructure or public safety or emergency management. At the same time, there are opportunities to drive more revenue. And I don't mean from taxes and permits and fees. I mean by having more jobs here, more industries here, more employers here, and having a much more positive business mindset to attract corporations to come here, plant their roots here, stay here, and expand, which creates not just more jobs for people and not just more economic opportunity, but also in turn more revenue for the city, which allows us, again, to better manage things. The other opportunity we have coming up during the term that I would be mayor is the Olympics. We're going to have the Super Bowl and the Olympics, and those are both opportunities to either, they could be positive or negative, to either lose money, have increased spending, and increase our deficit, or to manage it well and create more revenue, more opportunity, and build a surplus to allow us to do more things.
So what departments or programs or projects would you invest in to achieve public safety?
Yeah, so if you look at public safety, obviously we are at one of the lowest levels we've had in a long time. There's 8,600 police today. That is a much lower level. We should be closer to 10,000. So that's a problem right now. We don't have enough patrols. Our patrols are less than 50% per capita relative to New York or Chicago or Philadelphia or other major cities. So there's a reason people don't feel safe. It is less safe. There's also a lot of opportunity to leverage technology and innovation, which is being done by most major cities elsewhere in the country and the world to improve surveillance, investigation, and overall public safety management. And it's not limited to the police. This is true for fire. It's true for emergency management. Like I mentioned before, we could do a better job around incident command and how we structure things, how we prep for things, all of which is about budget allocation and optimization. And that's something that I've had to do for many, many years as a public company CEO, right? You have to set your budgets. You have to tell Wall Street what you're going to do, and then you have to do it. And you can't move things around. You have to decide. You have to optimize your budgets. You have to watch every dollar and make sure you're being efficient. And I think there is tremendous opportunity across the board in every area that we've talked about to drive more efficiency and in many cases spend less money and get better results. And you might say, well, that sounds unlikely. The reality is you could think of things in your own life and you could think about almost any aspect of life. If you put 3 people in charge of something, you are much less likely for that thing to get done than if you put 1 person in charge of it. And too often in this city, we have 3, 5 different organizations, different agencies, different groups that are trying to do or responsible for the same things. And you've seen this over time. And I'm not just talking about the city. I'm talking about how the city is working with the county and the overlap there. There is so much efficiency that we can drive that would enable us to reallocate funds to things that people care about, right? They want the streets to work. They want less traffic. We want more safety. We want to feel that we're prepared for disasters. And we want more economic opportunity. And we want things to cost less. And that is true across this city. I don't care which of the 99 neighborhoods you're talking about. everybody feels like these issues are pervasive, that the city is broken and we need to fix it.
What should the mayor's role be in economic development in the city, and which departments or tools do you think the mayor has to exercise that ability?
So I think some of this, and we didn't get to talk about this, but one of the keys to success as a leader is culture. And how do you set the culture for your organization? Because at the end of the day, no matter how good a leader you are or how bad a leader you are and how much you micromanage, either way, you can't be everywhere all the time. You have to set a framework that pervades the organization, that becomes how people make decisions, right? There was a movie about this talking about how Nike does it. And this idea of setting the standards to help people understand what's expected of them and how to operate is critical to a high-performing team. And this city has not done that. This city needs to have transparency, accountability, and a focus on results. And when it comes to business, we have to be treating employers and developers as our partners and our clients, right, our customers, and not as the enemy. And that mindset has a huge impact on how people feel. It's part of the reason that we don't have great retention in a lot of these public organizations, right? A lot of public sector agencies and departments. It's part of the reason that we don't have companies thinking about relocating to LA. It's part of the reason that people are leaving and whole industries are leaving. We didn't get to talk about Hollywood, but Hollywood new movie permits are down 40% since 2019. That's 120,000 people in LA out of work. That is a significant impact on economic opportunity in this city, and there's so much more that we could be doing to foster development, to foster opportunity, to foster an environment where people want to live, want to start companies, want to raise their families, and want to succeed. And that's an opportunity that we have.
I've got some lightning round questions on some specific issues. So I wanted first to see if there's any folks in the audience who had questions.
It takes a village. Who's your brain trust? Who's your Rob Deaton? Who's going to really help you gain the insight into the mechanical operations of City Hall?
Yeah, so we're trying to build a very broad coalition. I've been a lifelong Democrat, but I have friends who are Republican. I have friends that are more liberal, friends that are more conservative. I've worked with people across the city, across the county, across the state, and across the country. And there are opportunities to build a broad coalition here to get city council and the mayor's office and the county working better together. There's ways we could do more with the state. There is more we could be doing with the federal government. And there are opportunities for us to rise together. And I'll give you just a very specific example of how I do this. So when we started Better Angels, we thought perhaps the nonprofits would be antagonistic because we were a new nonprofit coming into the space. There were already a lot of large homeless service providers working in LA, and we were going to be the new kids on the block. And would that be detrimental to them? And what we've been able to do through a lot of outreach and a lot of work and a lot of partnership building is partner with all of them, build a very broad coalition. We build technology for them. We're doing service days with them. We're working together with all of the nonprofits, not some of them. We work with 140 different nonprofits at Better Angels to deliver our services, to get our message out there, to find people who are in need of financial assistance, to leverage technology to make their work more efficient and effective. And that's not by accident. You have to proactively do that. It requires real effort, but That's exactly what I would be doing as mayor. You got to bring everybody in, and it's not that we're all going to agree. Every organization I've run, there's disagreements in the boardroom or in the executive meetings. There are always disagreements, not every time, not every issue, but it's going to come up over time. I've been running organizations for 25 straight years. So lots of conflict, but we decide and we agree, and whether or not you agree, you commit. So we can disagree and commit, but we decide what we're doing, and that's what we're going to focus on, and that's the goals we're setting, and that's what we're executing against, and that's how you deliver results.
Hi, Jeff McConnell. Most of the voters of Los Angeles don't know who you are, and I haven't seen very much out there in the space. Do you intend to use your sizable fortune to put up your own advertising so people know who you are and your message can get out?
So I'm going to answer that two ways, because we're taking an omni-channel strategy now. We started this week, the advertising, so this will ramp up now for the next several weeks as we get the word out there. So we're talking about television, radio, print, digital media, digital marketing, social media, canvassing, you name it. We're going to be everywhere, and it does require funding. So I've provided an initial loan to the campaign, but the focus is to do traditional fundraising, because I think self-financing is not effective in building a broad coalition, and that's exactly what we want to do. So we were out there raising money, raising awareness, and working across every channel. It's events like this, it's the press, all of which gets the word out there, and we are very focused on awareness. We've done extensive polling. The city, by and large, agrees that we need to fix this city, that it's broken and it needs to be fixed. And we have found that across extensive polling, people want somebody who's a proven leader that's had results that can fix things. And so for us, it's really about awareness. How do we raise awareness and get people to know that I'm an option to be the next mayor? And we think if the word's out there, I will be the next mayor.
Hi, George Marianis. Thank you so much for all your answers. I'm really excited to hear what you're talking about in terms of housing and the homelessness issue. But why should we follow you? And what I mean is, how are you going to inspire people from San Pedro to Sylmar, from Boyle Heights to Homely Westwood, to all stand together and follow you? What is it that you're going to do for us to do that?
There's some skills that are born and some skills that are acquired over time. Leadership is often debated. Is that a born trait or an acquired trait over time? I think it's a little bit of both. You have to have some of the innate characteristics to be able to lead people. And then it's a skill you develop over time. You become a better leader over time. I've been leading for 25 years, and there is real opportunity to bring people together. I've done it over and over again. I've done it with veterans. I've done it around voluntary health. I've done it around education. We've done it with an internship program. I've done it with other CEOs. So I've led groups of CEOs, so a leader of leaders. And the reality is, it takes effort. It doesn't happen automatically. You have to inspire people. You have to understand people. And in my experience, you have to lead from the front. You have to be out there. You have to know the neighborhoods. You have to be at the forefront. You have to respond to crises from the front, not from the back, not hiding behind other people. And that's how you inspire people, and that's how you get results.
Let me do a couple lightning round questions.
Yeah.
I get 4 that are potential ballot questions that you have to vote against at home, and then 2 are issues that keep coming up in public dialogue.
So potential ballot measure to repeal the gross receipts tax in Los Angeles. Support or oppose?
Probably oppose at the moment because we need the money right now. We can't have lower revenue at the moment.
Potential ballot measure to repeal or reform Measure ULA.
Oh, totally support ULA as a disaster, the way it was drafted.
Reform or repeal it entirely?
It depends on what the reforms are. So if we don't get the reforms right, we should repeal it, but it's been an absolute disaster as it relates to the production of incremental housing.
Proposed ballot measure that would require voter approval for stadiums and hotels.
I would need to know what that means exactly. We have an incredible number of sports teams in this city. We, of course, because of all the stadiums that we have today, have the ability to run the Olympics without having to build even a single new stadium. We have some temporary things being set up, but that is incredible and speaks to the diversity and culture and opportunity in this city. I love the teams here. I go to lots of sporting events, so I wouldn't want to do anything to prevent that from happening. So I just need to know more about that bill in particular.
A proposed ballot measure that would put an additional tax on businesses where the CEO makes has an extreme pay gap between the CEO and the average employee.
Yeah, so it's a real issue and affordability is a real issue. I am very hesitant to do anything that's seen as anti-business in a city that absolutely must be attracting more business right now. We are not doing a good job attracting businesses. We need more economic opportunity here. We want more employers here. And everything we've done over the last many years has pushed people away. So I would not support that right now.
Okay. Two issues that keep coming up in the public discussion. One sort of gained a little traction here because it was mentioned in the New York mayoral debate. Fareless transit in Los Angeles. Support or oppose?
Yeah, super interesting question. I've done a lot of research on this now. The metro system's great. Actually, most riders oppose fareless because they want the transit officers to be on the trains and make sure there's safety there. And they find that the people who are not paying the fares are the ones who are causing the problems. However, we absolutely should have programs for people that can't afford it. And so we already do. We already have a program for people that are below 50% AMI that get 20 free rides a month. That's probably not enough. 20 is not enough, right? That's only 10 days, really. So I think we should be giving them free passes. And the people that can't afford it should have the opportunity to leverage public transit. But people who can afford it should pay for it.
The data to look at on that, my bias is showing here, huge proponent of fareless transit, is that most riders actually are low income. So you may be talking about a majority of riders.
Yeah, it might be a majority of riders that don't have to pay. And I think people that need to use public transit to get to work absolutely should be helped to get to work. There's something for seniors also. We should encourage those programs too.
A recurring issue in Los Angeles is whether or not to ban sidewalk or outdoor camping if shelter beds are available.
Well, this law already exists. It's not a question of do we need the law? We have it. It's do we enforce the law? And I think we have to understand, look, I call better angels because we want people to be compassionate. When you talk to people about the homeless issue, you get two responses. Some people are very empathetic. Other people are very angry. And many people are both. They feel compassionate generally, but they're very angry about the unhoused individual in front of their store, their office, or school in their park. And I think we have to have common sense with some of these things. We should not have unhoused individuals in front of schools. We should not be obstructing thoroughfares and places where people need to go. And we absolutely need more interim housing. And we can do that. We can talk for hours about this topic, but we can also better leverage the interim housing we already have and better utilize it. So I think we 100% need to have places for people to go. We also need to have more services for mental health and addiction that enable people not just to have a place to go, but get serviced when they're at that place, which is why things like Inside Safe hasn't been working. Having said that, we absolutely should be able to clear encampments where they don't belong.
Two last questions. Los Angeles is a huge, big, diverse city. We have income inequality, which we've discussed a little bit. We also have access inequality. Right? There are people in parts of the city, the West Side, who have Governor Newsom on speed dial. Right? They can talk to the governor and they can talk to their congressperson if they want. And then there are people who are totally shut out. As you've campaigned, who have you identified as the disenfranchised or the voiceless that you would like to empower?
Yeah, so if you look at the organizations that I've run, the 1,000 Interns Initiative is obviously targeted people who are otherwise disenfranchised, right? These are people that would not have this kind of economic opportunity. We've helped over 2,000 people get that economic opportunity. If you look at the work Better Angels is doing around prevention, these are people that are extremely vulnerable. They don't have access to friends, family that could give them a loan. Interestingly, with that program, I will tell you that when we were first starting the program and first doing the distributions, we would constantly get called by the bank with fraud alerts because they thought we were being fraudulent by paying the landlords in these different neighborhoods. And this was even when we opened a bank account in the neighborhood that we were doing the distributions in. So this kind of discrimination and lack of access is pervasive, and it's a real thing and needs to be fought. I've tried to, as part of my campaign, go everywhere in this city. We're on, it's part of my social media, a 120 stop tour of LA's 99 neighborhoods and really get to know the whole city, meet people in every neighborhood, understand what their issues are. And what I've been most struck by is not intuitive, but the issues are the same for everybody. Actually, almost everyone agrees. There might be some slight weighting differences. Some people are more concerned about economic opportunity, but quite frankly, people you wouldn't think are concerned about economic opportunity are concerned about it for their kids, even if it doesn't affect them. And you might think public safety is more impactful in places where people feel like there's a rise in property crime. In fact, everywhere people are concerned about public safety. People are concerned about housing everywhere. People are concerned about homelessness everywhere because it pervades the city. And that is both disappointing because the problems are so clear and so obvious and yet they're not being fixed, but also encouraging because that's how I think we could fix things very quickly, because there is in some ways an extremely broad coalition already focused on wanting to solve these problems. And that makes it easier to get things done because you don't have to change behavior necessarily, you just have to execute.
Final question, it's more sort of a personal nature. We're living in really challenging times. The economy for many people is a mess. Homeless crisis persists. We have neighbors who are being kidnapped off the streets by masked agents, the federal government. The political system is a mess. A lot of people are feeling either cynical or hopeless. Someone who runs for office obviously has faith that something can be better, otherwise they would run. I'm curious, where do you draw strength, hope, or faith?
So that's a great question. And I would say part of that is my upbringing and the democratic values that were instilled in me from the beginning. Part of it is having mentors, teachers, advisors throughout my life that taught me this idea that you and I can change the world, and that if we work together we can actually accomplish things. And part of it is the experience I've had. I've had results. I've been able to build a giant multinational company to educate people all over the world. I've been able to respond, help build an organization that responds to disasters and helps people on their worst days around the world. We've built an organization that gave hope to families that were subjected to food allergies. We've given hope to thousands of Angelenos by giving their kids a new career path that literally changes the life, not just of the kid, but the whole family. And in some cases, the whole neighborhood. We've kept people housed who were literally hopeless and thought they were going to be unhoused the next day or the next week. And so it's not just being instilled with the belief that you can change the world, but actually being able to do it. That gives me hope that this city can be fixed. But I will tell you, I think it's urgent. And the reason I'm running now is because I think if we keep going in the wrong direction, it's going to become too expensive and too difficult to dig ourselves out of this. We're going to be in too big a hole, and it's going to be years or maybe decades till we fully recover. I think we have an opportunity now to turn things around, get back on track, and go beyond the best times in LA. Because even when people say, oh, I want those old times, I want the best times, they weren't the best times for everybody, right? They were the best times for maybe a group of people. We've had a lot of discrimination in the city. And so we want a time that is what the potential is for Los Angeles, which should be one of the greatest cities on earth, and I believe will be, but we need to do it together, and that's why I'm running for mayor.
Thanks for joining me for this, Adam. I really appreciate your thoughtful and your nuanced and informed answers. It shows you've really done a lot of research. I wish we had time to talk about immigration, to talk about climate change, to talk more about the city budget, to talk about street safety and transportation. Next time I should book these for 4 hours. And maybe we'll get that if we need to. Thank you very much. We have a parting gift. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And what is it? It is a Cal State LA mug.
Okay, great. Thank
Cal
you.
State LA paraphernalia. Our president, the president of the college, Dr. Bernice Eames, would be here if she weren't at a conference right now. And so it's very important that we leave you with a token of her appreciation. So,
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much.